Hi class, here we are in chapter 3, and you may be thinking, why are we studying speaking ethics when we have no more speeches left? And I want to talk about ethics in terms of being ethical receivers of information, which hopefully you're going to be doing the rest of your life. Now we realize that when we repeat information, we become opinion leaders somewhat, and when you're at a podium, you take on that responsibility for large groups of people. And so there's a huge responsibility that you're getting your information accurately, and that you're vetting your sources, and that you're fact checking, and that you're not reporting things that you don't know to be true. So there is a responsibility there. So chapter 3 looks at ethics. And Voltaire once said that he may not agree with what you say, but he would defend to his death your right to say it. So it's nice that we live in a country where we have freedoms. And I think that this whole sheltering in place has challenged that thought for America, because we have not encountered this in our lifetimes. We have been free to leave our homes, to shop where we wanted to shop, to keep the hours that we wanted to keep. And when we have that freedom restricted, we balk. We resent it. We post on Facebook things, and you can find people who think that we're doing this unnecessarily, and you can find people who think that we need to be doing this for an extended period of time. So you just have to choose who your opinion leaders are, and do your research. So when we think about ethics, there are people who think of ethics absolutely. I like to call that truth with a capital T. And they use principles to govern every action they do. And maybe it would be truth telling, that you would always tell the truth, that is your ethical code that says that. There are other people who believe in a situational view of ethics, which maybe might be truth with a small t, that would say that it depends on the situation. There are situations where you don't have to tell everything you know if it's going to harm someone. And but there are other people who say that's not my problem. The way you receive the information isn't my problem. So I don't know where you reside on this, but there is room for all of that. You got to remember, though, that there are things that are legal that are still not ethical. As president of the board of the Y, we have been making some decisions at the beginning of this pandemic. It was legal to stay open. And so we had some decisions to make about the ethics of putting our staff at risk, of bringing large people together, groups of people together. This was at the first weekend before everything shut down that Tuesday. We had to decide if we were still going to be open. That Monday was really critical, because we have a daycare center, and we are a drop-off place. So we knew that when school closed on Tuesday, that we would probably be a go-to place for teenagers and kids younger than that, whose parents were working. And was that ethical to bring people together when we hadn't been given a directive that it was illegal to do that? So we had decisions to make, and they became ethical decisions. And we talked about the risk of putting someone out front taking temperatures. And because we knew at that time, we didn't know as much, but we had heard that repeated exposure to the virus made a person even at greater risk. So those became ethical decisions that weren't necessarily legal ones. There are because of free speech, you can legally say things that do not support your president, that go against your employer. That's protected speech. And we have areas on campus that are protected for free speech. So if you had something that you wanted to say to groups of people, there are areas of campus where you can get permission to do that, because freedom of speech is protected under the First Amendment. Thank goodness. We do that for a lot of extremists, though. And if you think about who that First Amendment protects, it doesn't always protect mainstream information. But there are a whole lot of things that may be unethical to share that are still legal. So you have to balance those two things. Something that, maybe you don't think it's ethical to talk about your employer, the place that you work, practices, coworkers, things like that. But it's legal to gossip. It may not be. A lot of us would say it's not ethical to do those things, but the First Amendment allows you to do those things. So when you look at Unit 6, it talks about things that, not lying by omission, inferring things, taking information out of context. I hate it when you're interviewed for something and something that you might have said in passing becomes a headline. And that's not illegal. I mean, technically they could say you said that, but when you take something out of context, as communicators, we know that it changes things and it makes you feel like you said things that you didn't necessarily say. So there's a whole lot of information here. We know that plagiarism is illegal, or it's against your academic code. It can allow you to get fired. We know that the same rules apply in speaking that they do in writing information. And then when you think about receiving information, and that's what the angle I took on the discussion board, is your responsibility in checking out information before you become part of the problem of passing it along. Because things take on a light and a heat of their own, a fire of their own. And there's something called the sleeper effect. The sleeper effect says that you might take in information, and we take in a lot of information, right? So you might forget where you heard it. Let's say that you're in the checkout line and you just see a headline that says that Martha Stewart has gone back to prison. And you're like, really? I never heard that. I knew she had been in prison. And so you file that away in your memory. And we know that things stay in your memory sometimes for a long time, but they might get disconnected from their source. And you're talking to friends and you're like, hey, I heard that Martha Stewart's back in prison. And then people repeat that. And you disconnect it from the tabloid from which it came. And now it takes on a whole new level of credibility because you said it. And so you got to be careful about keeping in mind where you receive. And if someone who you don't necessarily trust tells you something, then you probably shouldn't repeat it as fact. There are ethics involved in that. So look at the fallacies. You may have heard of these in a logic class, and strive to be an ethical public speaker for sure, because we know that there's a responsibility when you get up and address groups of people. But even one-on-one, dyadically, it would be nice to have your reputation be that you are a smart consumer of information and that you're a trusted source when it comes to topics that you choose to have opinions about. I wish you health and happiness, and remember that this unit, just like with the next unit, has a discussion post and a quiz. So make sure that you abide by all the deadlines, and I hope all is well in your world.